elected, they told us. Hillary Clinton said that repeatedly. Now, at first, it was hard to take any of it very seriously. We tried, but there was no evidence it was true at all. And so a rational person concluded the obvious. This was a childish psychological defense mechanism. It was not a factual claim. And yet they kept saying it in the face of no evidence. And over time, they began acting on it like it was true. And then even over more time, they paralyzed the entire federal government for years, fruitlessly trying to prove the core claims of Russiagate. But they never could because those claims weren't true. And yet, critically, they clung to those claims. They never stopped repeating the talking point. The Russian government, quote, hacked our election. That was Jen Psaki not long ago saying it out loud like it were true. Now, here's the context. As she said that, Psaki was trying to explain why the Biden administration is, in effect, working to overthrow the Russian government right now. And for once, Jen Psaki was telling the truth. That is why. Democrats have convinced themselves that Russia stole the presidency, which rightfully belonged to Hillary Clinton, and they mean it when they say it. And that's why they are taking us to war with Russia. Now, there are a lot of things going on here, a lot of threads, as in any big story, but on some level, the core motivation is just that simple. Here's what we know it's not. We know the war in Ukraine is not about saving democracy, please. We know it's not about protecting the sacred borders of a sovereign country. We know the Biden administration doesn't care about those principles because they run our country, and we see how they act. And we know for dead certain, and this comes as sad news to a lot of Americans who are compassionate, but we know now that the war in Ukraine is certainly not about helping the Ukrainian people, those poor people. Many more Ukrainian civilians will die, certainly, thanks to the Biden administration's policies. If you wanted to save Ukraine, its people, its infrastructure, its nation, you would push for a settlement now. You would have done it 2 months ago, but they're not doing that. They've rejected it out of hand. So that's not their goal, saving Ukraine, saving human lives. No, that's not their goal. Instead, the war in Ukraine is designed to cause regime change in Moscow. They want to topple the Russian government. That would be payback for the 2016 election. So this is the logical, maybe the inevitable end stage of Russiagate. Now, we should have seen this coming because they said it out loud years ago. Here's Adam Schiff from 2 years ago predicting it, saying it. Watch this.
As one witness put it during our impeachment inquiry, the United States aids Ukraine and her people so that we can fight Russia over there and we don't have to fight Russia here.
So we arm Ukraine so we can fight Russia. Now, how many Americans, whatever you think of Putin, probably not much, justifiably, probably don't have a lot of interest in moving to Russia, but how many Americans then or now want to, quote, fight Russia? A very small group. But Adam Schiff said it out loud at the time in the House of Representatives. We don't arm Ukraine so we can help the Ukrainians. They're merely unfortunate pawns in all of this. We arm Ukraine so that we can punish Russia. Why? For stealing Hillary Clinton's coronation. If only we had taken Adam Schiff seriously as he said it again and again and again. But now we can't help but take Adam Schiff seriously because he's one of the prime movers of this war. Adam Schiff spent this weekend in Eastern Europe checking on the progress of the war he has done so much to bring about. He traveled there with Nancy Pelosi and a number of other of the most conspiracy-minded Democrats in Congress. These are the Russiagate true believers seeing their theory come to fruition. That's what this is. Here's the group, Pelosi, Schiff, and the rest, meeting with the president of Ukraine.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming.
Pleasure to meet you. Jim McGovern from Massachusetts. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. You're here.
President,
Hi
good
again.
to see you again.
Yes.
Yes.
You're welcome. Hi, Mr. President. Jason Crow from Colorado. Nice to meet you.
Adam Schiff from California.
You're very welcome.
Honored to meet you.
So how did Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi wind up in charge of America's foreign policy as we stand on the cusp of a third world war? And why are Republicans supporting them? And what happens when you put people with a demonstrated lack of boundaries or self-control or wisdom in charge of something as important as the fate of nations? Well, here's what happens. Watch as one after the other, the Democrats you just saw on tape announce that this regime change is not nearly over. In fact, this war has just begun. Watch.
But one thing is really clear, that this delegation wanted to send, but also President Biden has made very clear with his most recent aid package request. It is a historic request that we're going to push hard in the United States Congress to help pass. And it sends a very simple message. We are not interested in stalemates. We are not interested in going back to the status quo. The United States of America is in this to win. And we will stand with Ukraine until victory is won.
That was Congressman Jason Crow, a confirmed buffoon, telling us that we're not in it to achieve a stalemate. We're? Really? Some of us were under the impression, based on their public statements, that we were defending the sovereignty of another country, Ukraine, that it's not up to us, it's up to the voters of Ukraine, because Ukraine's a democracy. But here's Congressman Crow telling us we're not going to accept a, quote, stalemate. We're in it to win it. We're going to win. We're here till we get victory. Well, that raises the obvious question, what is winning? What is victory? How do we know when we've won? Well, Jason Crow didn't tell us. And neither, by the way, did Nancy Pelosi. She just said we're going to keep sending weapons to Ukraine, quote, until the fight is done.
We believe that we are visiting you to say thank you for your fight for freedom, that we are on a frontier of freedom, and that your fight is a fight for everyone. And so our commitment is to be there for you until the fight is done.
How did we get here exactly? Do you feel betrayed? If you're one of the millions of good-hearted Americans who put a Ukrainian flag pin on your lapel or put one in front of your house expressing solidarity with the poor oppressed people of Ukraine, you probably didn't think you were signing up for this. Nancy Pelosi telling us we're in a war with a nuclear-armed power with no clear end date. Seen that movie before? Oh, we just finished one after 20 years in Afghanistan. Will it look like that? This is an open-ended conflict, said Nancy Pelosi, just like the war on terror. And just in case you missed it, they all repeated that line. Here's your nightmare again. Adam Schiff in charge of the war against Russia. Watch.
The whole freedom-loving world has an interest in the outcome of this war and ensuring that Ukraine is victorious. And we are determined to do everything in our power to make it so. We are proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine, and we will until victory is won.
These people are playing dress up. They have no idea what they're talking about, and they don't care. They get to pretend to be statesmen for a day. But when Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, again, people with a demonstrated years-long record of being willing to say anything for personal power, anything to improve the fortunes of their political party, when they're standing up with a foreign head of state saying, here's an open check, you fill in the number, you got to wonder where this is going. We know where it could go. This is the most reckless foreign policy in our lifetimes, in American history. You are watching a group of decadent, in some cases senile leaders, casually dismiss the consequences of going to war with a nuclear-armed nation. Dismiss the consequences of nuclear war, like it's not even worth thinking about. But it is worth thinking about. They tell us daily Vladimir Putin is evil and insane, and that may well be true. But this same man has threatened to use nuclear weapons against the United States and Western Europe if this continues. And why don't we believe him? You may have missed this. The New York Times didn't seem to have time to cover it. But here's Russia's foreign minister just last week underscoring the point.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov with a chilling warning. The risk of nuclear war is a real one. Speaking to state-run media, Lavrov said, quote, the danger is serious. It is real. It cannot be underestimated. He added that he did not want to see these risks of nuclear war, quote, artificially inflated.
He does not see it as an artificially inflated risk, says Lavrov. So what they're saying is, we will use nuclear weapons against you and your allies if you don't back off. If, for example, this seems existential, like you're trying to overthrow our government. It's hardly defensive of Russia to say that's a real possibility, and has been for quite some time. So it was 2 years ago that Vladimir Putin revised Russia's nuclear deterrent policy. Now, the new policy allows Russia to use nuclear weapons in response to a conventional strike. That means some sort of non-nuclear provocation. Now, in March, Russia's former president, Dmitry Medvedev, who sits on Russia's Security Council, reminded our country of this policy. He warned Joe Biden that Russia would indeed use nuclear weapons against the West in response to any, quote, act of aggression that is committed against Russia and its allies. Now, what would that look like? Would it include helping to shoot down a Russian transport plane carrying hundreds of Russian troops? The Pentagon has admitted doing that. You don't have to be for Russia to see that as a pretty reckless act and not just doing it, but then bragging about it to NBC News? Where does that get us? We should find out. We do know that Putin has placed Russia's nuclear forces on high alert. And again, Russia has the largest nuclear arsenal in the world. And again, why wouldn't he use those weapons? They tell us daily he is evil and insane, and he may well be.